Like Hitler, Mussolini's first acts made him immensely popular. Massive programs of public works provided employment and transformed Italy's infrastructure. Corruption was rooted out and the mafia more or less eliminated. Italy's armed forces were built up, including an advanced modern air force. In the Mediterranean, Mussolini launched a powerful navy, bigger than the combined might of the British and French Mediterranean fleets. When the Great Depression came, Italy seemed to weather it better than most. Mussolini became a source of worldwide inspiration. Political leaders, not least Adolf Hitler in Germany, saw the fascist system as a role model, strong and purposeful, in contrast to the weakness of the democracies in Britain and France. But Mussolini wanted more than adulation. He wanted to recreate the Roman Empire, and he already had a target in mind for his first imperial land grab. His target was Abyssinia, today's Ethiopia. Italy already had colonies on its borders in Eritrea and Italian Somaliland. In December 1934, Italian forces provoked a clash with Abyssinian troops at an oasis in the Ogaden region, well inside Abyssinian territory. Mussolini then sent reinforcements to Eritrea and Italian Somaliland, demanding that Abyssinia pay reparations. The Emperor of Abyssinia, Haile Selassie, appealed in person to the League of Nations. He called on it to live up to its ideals. Here was a small nation under threat from another member of the League. This was the supreme test. But the League did nothing. Britain's Foreign Minister, Anthony Eden, at least tried to broker a peace deal, but Mussolini would have none of it. In early October 1935, the Italian army invaded from Eritrea and Italian Somaliland. The primitive Abyssinian forces stood little chance against a modern army equipped with artillery and tanks. The Italian Air Force had total command of the air and harried the Abyssinians, on occasions dropping gas bombs, even though gas had been outlawed at Versailles as a crime against humanity. After 6 months, Abyssinia was completely overrun. The Emperor Haile Selassie fled into exile in Britain. From its headquarters in Switzerland, the League of Nations wrung its hands. It did impose economic sanctions, but they had little effect. Mussolini's aggression had revealed two things. The League of Nations, that great hope for peace, was impotent. And both Europe's supposed major powers, the democracies Britain and France, no longer had the stomach for a fight. Both Britain and France had been shattered by World War I, and their economies had never really recovered. Both had witnessed waves of strikes and unrest. Both had suffered mass unemployment, even before the Great Depression. Both also faced the cost of controlling empires, now swollen by taking on Germany's former colonies and the Middle Eastern territories once run by the Turkish Ottoman Empire. And above all, both had been traumatized by the horrific casualties of World War I. A succession of British leaders, Lloyd George, Ramsay MacDonald, and above all Stanley Baldwin, all resolved to keep Britain out of future conflicts. Despite horrific casualties on the Western Front, Britain had ended World War I with a large and very effective conscript army. This was immediately run down to a small professional force designed to police its sprawling empire. And when the Great Depression struck, any ideas of modernizing the army were abandoned. It meant that Britain went into the run-up to war economically and militarily weak. French losses during World War I had been even worse than the British. Ever mistrustful of the Germans, a large conscript army was maintained. But throughout the 1920s, France's birth rate had declined. It became clear that there would be a manpower shortage by the mid to late 1930s. France realized it could never compete with Germany on the size of its army alone. The solution was to adopt an entirely defensive mentality. The Maginot Line, a series of fortifications, was begun in 1930 along the frontier with Germany and ran as far as the Belgian border. There, it theoretically linked up with fortifications planned by the Belgians. This new French military approach meant that France was only capable of waging a defensive war. It just did not have the ability to launch an attack on Italy, even if the British had had the troops to help. And of course, both countries knew that their navies in the Mediterranean were outnumbered by Mussolini's new fleet. So when Italy conquered Abyssinia, it made sense for both powers to do nothing. It just seemed too remote, too much someone else's problem. By now, they both had to deal with all the traumas of the Great Depression. That seemed so much more pressing. And above all, they were now faced with a military threat far closer to home. A resurgent and rearming Germany.